All right, so get this. The FBI and CISA are basically telling everyone to stop texting.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
pretty crazy, huh? They're like waving red flags about it.
Like ditch texting altogether.
Yeah, you heard that right. Stop sending texts.
No, interesting.
And we're going to find out why.
Okay.
So the source for all this is this article from Forbes.
Okay.
It's called FBI Warns iPhone and Android Users Stop Sending Texts.
Catchy title.
And today we're going to unpack all of it. Like, what's the big deal? Why are they making such a fuss?
Yeah, because at first glance, it seems a little extreme, right?
It does seem extreme.
But
like
when you
this-
look at the security risks involved, it kind of makes more sense.
So walk us through it. Like, what's got everyone so freaked out?
Well, it all stems from this huge cyber espionage campaign.
Oh, boy.
They're calling it Salt Typhoon.
Tilt Typhoon?
Yeah. And the article links it to a group in China
Okay.
that targeted U.S. telecom companies.
So, like, the backbone of our communication systems?
Exactly. They hacked into the infrastructure we depend on for, like, everything.
That's unsettling.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the article did mention that, like, they didn't actually steal, like, all call and text content.
Right. So here's the thing.
Great.
They may not have gotten, like, every single text message,
Right.
but they did get their hands on metadata.
Ah, metadata. Okay.
And metadata might sound kind of harmless,
Yeah.
but it can actually reveal a lot about you.
Like, what kind of stuff?
Well, it's basically information about your communication, not the content itself.
Okay.
So you think like who you called, when you called, where you were when you called, how long you talked.
So, like, a digital trail.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a digital breadcrumb trail.
And, I mean, that could lead to some pretty private info.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Like imagine someone piecing together your routine just from your call logs.
Yeah.
Like where you go, who you contact, even sensitive locations.
That's scary.
That's the power of metadata.
Okay. So that makes sense. But how does all this tie back to, like, the stop texting advice?
Right.
Or are everyday texts really that vulnerable?
So the problem is the tech behind traditional SMS,
Mm-hmm.
and even its supposed successor, RCS,
Okay.
standard SMS messages, are sent as plain text.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no encryption at all.
Hmm.
So it's like sending a postcard that anyone can read.
Wow. Okay. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, even with newer phones and this RCS messaging, are we still, like, exposed?
Well, RCS stands for Rich Communication Services,
Okay.
and it does have some improvements over SMS,
Okay.
but it still doesn't have full end-to-end encryption when you're messaging between Androids and iPhones.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Really?
So even if you and your friend both have the latest phones,
Mm-hmm.
your conversation might not be as secure as you think.
So even if, like, I have an iPhone and I feel like my stuff's pretty locked down,
Yeah,
if I'm texting someone with an Android, it's basically like sending a postcard.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that cross-platform encryption is still missing.
Wow. Okay, so that's the problem. Our texts are out there exposed.
Right.
But what's the solution?
So the article mentions this responsibly managed encryption,
Yeah.
but that seems kind of vague.
Yeah, what does that actually mean, like, for regular people?
Well, that's where things get a little tricky.
Oh, boy.
You see, responsibly managed encryption is still being debated.
Okay.
There isn't really a universally agreed upon definition.
Okay.
Some people see it as like a necessary measure for law enforcement
Okay.
to be able to access encrypted communications, but only if they have a warrant.
Okay.
But others worry it could be like a slippery slope that weakens the whole point of encryption.
So it's like a tug of war between privacy and security.
Exactly. And it's a
Yeah.
tough one to figure out.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And this debate isn't just happening in the U.S., by the way.
Oh, really?
The article mentions it's a big thing in Europe, too.
Huh.
There's this whole chat control debate going on over there.
What's that about?
Well, there are proposals in Europe that would require tech companies to scan all platforms
Okay.
for illegal content like child sexual abuse material.
Well, that sounds like a good thing, right? I mean, protecting children is super important.
Yeah, of course.
But wouldn't that weaken encryption for everybody?
That's exactly what privacy advocates are worried about.
Okay.
They argue that if you start making ways to scan encrypted content,
Hmm.
it becomes really hard to guarantee the privacy and security of all communications.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you're trying to balance two really important things.
Exactly.
It's tough.
It is a complex issue.
This is getting kind of intense. It's
Yeah.
making me wonder if I need, like, a degree in cybersecurity just to send a text message.
I know what you mean. It's a lot to keep up with.
It really is.
But that's why it's so important to stay informed
yeah,
and be part of these conversations.
absolutely.
We need to think critically about the tech we use
Yeah.
and how it affects our lives.
You're so right. Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
But let's shift gears back to this Salt Typhoon attack for a sec.
Okay.
So the article mentioned a Senate hearing and a review by the Cyber Safety Review Board. What can we expect from those?
Well, the Senate hearing is probably going to focus on figuring out like how big this Salt Typhoon attack really was.
Okay.
And they'll probably explore potential legislation to improve cybersecurity for U.S. telecom networks.
Okay, so like ways to beef things up.
Yeah, make things more secure.
Okay.
And the Cyber Safety Review Board will really dig into the details of the attack,
Okay.
like how government agencies and telecom providers responded.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll probably come up with recommendations to prevent this from happening again.
So potentially some big changes coming up in how we approach cybersecurity.
Exactly. I think the Salt Typhoon attack really showed us how vulnerable our digital infrastructure is.
Yeah.
It's clear we need to do better, and these actions from the Senate and the Cyber Safety Review Board are important steps.
Okay, so lots of stuff happening at the higher levels.
Right.
But what about us regular folks?
Right.
What can we do right now to protect ourselves?
Well, besides switching to those encrypted messaging apps,
Yeah.
it's also crucial to stay on top of basic cybersecurity hygiene.
Cybersecurity hygiene. What's that?
Think of it like washing your hands before your digital life.
Okay, I like that.
Make sure all your devices and apps are updated
Okay.
with the latest security patches.
Huh?
Watch out for phishing attempts.
Right?
And this is a big one. Use strong, unique passwords
Oh, yeah, that's important.
for every single online account.
So it's like a digital hygiene checklist.
Exactly.
I like it.
It's simple but effective.
Okay, so checklist, passwords. What else? Anything we might be forgetting?
One thing that people often overlook
Okay.
is the importance of those terms of service and privacy policies
Oh, yeah, those things.
that we all just click agree on without reading.
Yeah, who reads those?
I know they're long and boring,
Yeah.
but it's really important to understand how companies collect, use, and share our data.
Okay.
It helps us make informed choices about our digital privacy.
Ugh. But reading privacy policies?
I know.
That sounds awful.
I hear you. They can be super dense and full of jargon.
Yeah.
But here's a tip.
Mm-hmm.
Look for summaries or key takeaways that highlight the main points.
Okay.
And if you're really short on time, there are websites and browser extensions
Oh, really?
that can analyze those policies for you
Yeah.
and flag any potential red flags.
Okay. That makes it a little less
And
painful.
it's easier to digest.
So it's all about being proactive and informed.
Exactly.
We can't just like passively accept whatever these companies decide.
Right. It's about reclaiming our digital agency.
I like that.
We need more transparency and accountability from these companies.
Yeah, because they hold so much of our data.
Is
Like
they-
we're taking back control
Right.
of our digital lives.
Exactly.
But honestly, all this talk about cybersecurity and privacy can feel kind of overwhelming.
It can be a lot.
Like, is there any hope for the future?
Yeah.
Will we ever truly be secure in this digital age?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
The truth is technology keeps advancing.
Yeah.
And the threats we face are always evolving too.
Mm.
It's a constant arms race,
Yeah.
and there's no single solution that's going to fix everything.
So it's not really about like achieving perfect security. It's
Mhm.
more about managing risk
Exactly.
and adapting.
Adapting to the changing landscape.
And that takes a team effort.
It does. Individuals, companies, and governments all need to work together
Okay.
to create a more secure and resilient digital ecosystem.
Sounds like we all have a role to play in this.
We do.
But where does that leave us?
Yeah.
Us everyday users just trying to navigate this crazy digital world.
That's where things get really interesting. Because despite all the challenges,
Uh-huh.
there are also a lot of opportunities for us to become more informed
Okay.
and empowered digital citizens.
Okay. I like that. And it all starts with,
Asking the tough questions.
yeah, we can't just blindly trust what these tech companies tell us. We
Right.
need to be a little skeptical, understand the trade-offs, and demand solutions that prioritize both our security and privacy.
Couldn't agree more. It's about moving away from just passively consuming tech
Yeah.
and becoming more active and engaged digital citizens.
Okay.
So it's like we have a responsibility to learn about this stuff,
Uh-huh.
hold these companies accountable, and push for policies that actually protect our rights.
I like that idea of digital citizenship.
Yeah,
It's like taking ownership of our digital lives.
exactly.
And speaking of taking ownership, that's a perfect segue to talking about the FBI and CISA's recommendation
Right.
to use those encrypted messaging and calling apps.
Right.
The Forbes article mentioned a few like WhatsApp, Signal, and iMessage.
Yeah, those are some good.
So what makes them stand out security-wise?
Well, WhatsApp and Signal have really raised the bar
Okay.
by making end-to-end encryption the default for all communication.
So everything's encrypted.
Yeah, they've built their whole platform around this principle.
Oh.
And they've earned a reputation for really protecting user privacy.
That's good to hear. But is there a catch?
Well,
Like, do these apps have some secret backdoor that lets the government in?
you know, that's where this whole responsible encryption thing gets a little messy.
Okay.
It's a concept that's still being debated,
Right.
and no one really agrees on what it means exactly.
Right.
Some people see it as a way for law enforcement to get access,
Uh-huh.
but only with a warrant,
Okay.
while others see it as a threat to the whole idea of encryption.
So even if I'm using one of these super secure apps,
Yeah.
my privacy isn't totally guaranteed if lawmakers decide to push through these chat control proposals.
That's the concern.
Yeah.
That's a little unsettling.
It is. It boils down to finding that balance between privacy and legitimate security concerns.
Right.
And as technology keeps evolving, it's only going to get more complicated.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We started with that Typhoon cyber attack,
Right.
talked about why encryption is so important, and even waded into the murky waters of responsible encryption.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It is.
So what's the main takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that standard texting just isn't secure.
Yeah.
If you really care about your privacy, switching to encrypted messaging apps is a must.
It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, it's like the digital equivalent of locking your front door.
It's like we're saying goodbye to postcards
Yeah,
and hello to sealed envelopes in the digital world.
right.
And honestly, I feel kind of empowered knowing that there are steps I can take to protect myself. This whole conversation has been eye-opening.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, staying informed is key.
Yeah.
The more you understand about the tech you use and the risks involved,
Right.
the better equipped you'll be to make those informed choices about your digital life.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
It really is, especially in today's world.
So to wrap things up, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Okay, so given how fast technology and cybersecurity threats are changing, how can you as an individual stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah.
How can you make responsible choices to protect your privacy in the future? It's a question worth thinking about.
Yeah, that's a great question to leave us with. Until next time, keep diving deep. Yeah, it's like we have to be proactive.
Absolutely.
We can't just sit back and let things happen to us.
It's about taking control.
Right, and making informed decisions.
Exactly.
So those encrypted messaging apps are a good place to start.
Definitely.
They seem like the way to go.
Yeah, if you're serious about protecting your privacy.
Right. And it's not that hard to switch over.
No, not at all.
I mean, most people already use WhatsApp,
Yeah, it's pretty popular.
and Signal is getting more and more popular too.
It's a great option.
So yeah, there are definitely things we can do
Mm-hmm.
to stay safe in this digital world.
And it's important to remember
This app.
this isn't just about us as individuals.
Okay.
It's about society as a whole.
What do you mean?
Well,
Yeah.
think about all the data that companies collect about us.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot, and it can be used for all sorts of things.
Like what?
Targeted advertising is one thing,
Okay.
but it can also be used for things like surveillance
Oh, wow.
and even manipulation.
That's scary.
It is,
Yeah.
and that's why it's so important to have these conversations
Yeah.
about privacy and security.
We need to be aware of the risks
Right.
and demand better protections.
Absolutely. It's about holding these companies accountable.
Yeah, and making sure they're using our data responsibly.
Exactly.
So it's not just about protecting ourselves.
Right.
It's about protecting everyone.
It is. It's about creating a better digital world for all of us.
That's a great point.
And I think it's something we should all be thinking about.
Yeah, it's definitely food for thought.
It is. And hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners some things to consider.
I think so. I know it has for me.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
It's been a really informative conversation.
Yeah. It's been great talking about this stuff.
And I think it's important to keep having these conversations.
I agree. The more we talk about these issues, the better equipped we'll be to address them.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe in that digital world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time, keep diving deep.